Hey guys, it's Hovis here, and I've got a very important message for you. Don't get your real estate license. Don't do it. Trust me on this one. If you're a real estate investor, you don't need a real estate broker's license. Most of my friends who have their license regret getting it eventually. And during this video, I'm going to explain why a real estate broker's license is not what you think that it is. A real estate broker's license has one purpose. That license is designed to allow you to sell properties for other people. And that's a fine vocation if what you're looking to do is run a service for other people. But if you're wanting to invest in your own portfolio, do your own deals, you don't need a license. I don't have a license. Not only do I not have a license, I will likely never have a license. Unless the government passes a dumb law that makes it so that in order to acquire private products, you have to have a license for that private product. Because at the end of the day, that's what a real estate transaction is. It's a home. You can treat it just like a ham sandwich, like a car, like anything that you buy from the store. There's no reason to have a license in order to buy a private product. Now, this is where a lot of people get confused. They think that in order to do real estate, someone that's licensed has to be involved. Not true. I've actually acquired properties on the kitchen countertop using a warranty deed, quitclaim deed, special warranty deed, bunch of different ways to acquire properties. I've acquired them with owner finance. I've acquired them with cash. I've acquired options. I have done a lot of deals where there was no realtor involved, where there was no title company even involved. Now, I don't recommend that unless you really understand title work. If what you're looking to do is get creative with the way you're funding your deals, a real estate investor's license will only hurt you, not help you. And here's why. When you get your license, you're now the professional. You're the one that has the state authorized requirements to represent buyers and sellers in a transaction. Now, like everything, there are strings attached. And the strings attached to the government allowing you to hold that license are very expensive. If you have a license, you now have a fiduciary responsibility, not just to your client, but to the community at large. You see, when I acquire a property, I'm representing myself. There are benefits to that. Number one, I can reduce the realtor fee like that. I automatically get a 3% discount just by going in unrepresented. And when you're dealing in volume like I do, 3% really adds up. Secondly, when I go acquire a property, I represent myself. I don't represent anybody else. I don't have to worry about the insecurities of a buyer, the insecurities of a seller. I don't care what somebody else does. I just get to represent myself. Thirdly, and most importantly, the fact that I'm not licensed means that the government can't hold me to a standard that those with their license are held to. I have heard horror stories of profits being ripped out of a deal, licenses being taken away, even though a realtor was acting in a private capacity. I've heard the Department of Regulatory agents saying to private acting realtors that they made too much money on a deal. I've got a deal that I purchased for $185,000, put $60,000 into it, sold it for over $400,000 and made $192,000. Do you know, I've had friends with a similar story. They got called on a listing, found out that the seller really just wanted to sell it and be done with it, bought it for themselves as a private individual, though they were licensed, fixed it up, sold it, made over $100,000, and that seller sued them, won, took their license away, made them give back a portion of the profit because they ruled that that listing agent was not acting on behalf of that seller. So before you get your real estate license, you need to really understand the strings that are attached to that license and the higher level of standards that you have to meet even in your private capacity. I'll give you another example. I had a real estate buddy of mine who did a lot of subject to transactions where you buy the property subject to the existing financing. They called him up and said, you can't do that. All of your properties now have to be sold because you have a license and we don't like that you're doing that. I've done tons of sub-twos. No big deal, never an issue, always make sure that the seller gets taken care of, no problem whatsoever. Let me also explain another situation where I purchased an option to buy a property. I then sold that option to somebody else. The Department of Regulatory Agencies called me up, DORA called me up and said, hey, you can't do that anymore. I said, why not? They said, well, because you're licensed. And I said, no, I'm not licensed. I'm just a private individual. I'm buying an option and I'm selling an option. There's nothing wrong with that. And they said, you know what? You're right. They would have had an issue with me if I were licensed and I was buying options and selling options. Rather, what a licensed person should be doing is representing the seller in selling an option or representing a buyer in buying the option, not being the person in the middle. Well, guess who I want to be as an investor? I want to be the one acquiring. I don't want to represent anybody else. I want to represent myself because I'm going to get the best deal for me and my family. You see, it's really attractive when you talk to real estate brokers and they're trying to recruit you for their team. And they say things like, let me pay for you to get your license. Ooh. You think you're getting a really good deal. You think that, hey, this person is investing in me, investing in my career, investing in my education, investing in my license. And what happens as you represent someone in selling or buying a deal, there's a commission. What that broker wants to do is have you make as much commission as possible because he's going to take a portion of that commission. The reason he's investing in your licensing is so that he can also profit off of your efforts. There's nothing wrong with that. That's an okay thing, but you need to know going in the rights that you're giving up in the licensing that you get from the state, from the real estate commission, from DORA, all of these kind of things is going to affect the way you acquire your own deals, particularly if you're wanting to use creative finance, subject to lease option, installment land contract, contract for deeds. And the question is, what is it that you really want to be doing? I'm not against realtors. I've got a lot of buddies that are realtors. I've got a lot of buddies who are realtors who said they would never get their license and wind up getting their license because it's such easy money right now. But that's not always the case. It's not always an easy endeavor. In fact, if you ask most real estate brokers how many deals they do in a year, you're going to get an answer between 1 and 3 deals a year. Being a real estate broker is a sales and marketing game. It's about being able to do the marketing to get the inbound leads to then put the properties under contract or put those buyers under contract to represent somebody and make a fee in the middle. If that's the business that you're wanting to do, you might want to consider wholesaling. Wholesaling is a sales and marketing game. You market for distressed properties, you put those properties under contract, then you sell the contract or you close on the deal and then sell it later. There are tons of courses that will teach you how to wholesale. You will be able to learn how to wholesale and run your business very similar to how realtors do it. The only difference between the two is one has a license that has a bunch of regulations that if you don't meet, you're going to get in big trouble, fined, lose your license, get lawsuits. Because if you go to court and it's the licensed professional against Sally homeowner, who do you think is going to win? The judge is going to say, hey, you have the license in screwing up this deal, you're the one to blame. But if both of you are on equal playing field, just representing your own self, at least you're on this an even playing field. The only difference between being a broker and being a wholesaler is that a broker has a license to represent people, a wholesaler represents themselves. They still do the same sales, they still do the same marketing, they still want to make money on the transaction. The wholesaler, though, has the ability to say, I want to make more money than 3%. But we're doing so on distressed properties at wholesale prices and making money as a principal rather than a representative. I'm not really saying don't get a license. What I'm really saying is make sure you see all angles before you decide, because once you get that license, you are held to a different standard than the rest of us. Acquiring your own assets, particularly using creative finance, might be more difficult for you. Now, I know people will argue with me. Do so in the comments section about having a license and being able to do creative finance. Maybe you've got a state that's just more lenient. Here in Colorado, it's more difficult to do creative finance if you're licensed than in other parts of the country. I know that every market is different and therefore has different rules and different regulations, but what I can tell you is most of the time it doesn't help. Learn how to acquire properties for pennies on the dollar. Learn how to fund them with cash, creative finance, subject to installment land contract, contract for deed, lease options, all these different kind of weird methods that you've never heard anything about. But make it so that you understand very clearly who you are, where you want to go, and what you need to get there. So go ahead and get a license if you want to represent people. If you want to acquire for yourself, don't get a license. Just do deals. Don't automatically assume that licensing is the way to go. Thanks a ton for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.